Hey folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to another episode of our Unity tutorial, where we are building a sort of Civilization-style alert system. This should be the final episode. We've got a few things we want to wrap up over here. Now, in the last episode, we ran into this problem where when I'd spawned the test alerts, they came out like, they looked like they were overlapping. And I realized what's going on now. If you take a look at one of these alerts, notice that the scale is not 1 over here. If we were to go and select all these bad boys and reset their scale to 1 across the board, now they look right. Why is the scale off? Well, the reason they're off is because when we first create these objects, right over here, right, they're created on the primary hierarchy. They are, and then we set them to be the parent. What happens is because the parent, or some part of this new parent's chain, has some scale applied to it, the child gets the sort of inverse of the scale applied to maintain the consistency. The easiest way to demonstrate this is if we go into Unity here, and let's say I create, I don't know, some sort of cube over here, right? So I'm going to have some sort of cube in the world. There it is. Let's move our little, let's get out of 2D mode. There you go. Some sort of cube in the world. Okay. And I'm going to set this cube to be, say, oops, I actually went 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. So this cube is half the size that it originally was over here. Then let's say I create a second cube right there. Okay. Now this cube I'm going to leave untouched, and it's got a scale of 1, 1, 1. If I take this second cube and put it inside the first one, okay, it is now the child of this first cube. It has not changed its size in the world. But the way it does that is because it now has a scaling of 2, 2, 2 to counteract its parent's 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. You see what's going on there? So that happens all the time in the UI system when you spawn things like this, where you spawn things sort of outside of the UI system and then attach to a parent inside of that chain. Then it has to do some scaling things to fit in there. So there's a couple ways around it. One of the things I tend to just do is after I do this, I make sure that my new object then get its scale. Its local scale just gets reset to 1 across the board. Now, if we do that, we should get this to look all nice and lovely again. So that's good. Okay, so we've resolved that issue. That is wonderful. What I want to do here is I want to have some sort of other event that lets us trigger an event. And for that, what I want to do is let's imagine, let's set up some sort of situation here where our castle over here, let's say it's going to have its own script. It's got some sort of castle script on it. And one of the things that it does every turn of the game, right, is some sort of, so let's say we've got some sort of function, you know, public void new turn, right? Because it's a turn-based game. So on a new turn, so we're going to have it by default. We'll just have it run on start over here. Okay? By default, instead of being triggered by some greater game logic, we're just going to have new turn trigger once. On this turn, it does something like call, it wants a list of game objects, which is going to be enemies within bombard range. And imagine we have some sort of function that supplies that. Get enemies within bombard range, okay? Of this. So we've got, this is going to be a function. Make it public, sure. It's clearly going to return a list of game objects. I mean, it might be another kind of object, you know, ultimately in our real game, but we've got this. So imagine we have this function, and we have, I don't know, I suppose we probably have some sort of variable that says something like bombard range equals 2. Right, and so we have this function over here, and so this would normally use pathfinding. Well, I don't know if we need pathfinding really. Use distance plus line of sight to loop through all nearby tiles and check to see if there is an enemy within them. Okay, so there'd be some sort of logic over here, some sort of function that is to do that. And then, you know, if this returns any valid bombard targets within this range, and for us, we're just going to hard code this, well, more or less. What we're going to do is our little meeple over here, we're going to give it a script called, I don't know, unit. All right. And so what we're going to do for now is to test, just find, just return a list of all unit objects. All right, so what we're trying to do is we are trying to do a game object dot find object of type, which is unit. So this is going to return, does it return an array or a list? Oh, find objects of type is what we're looking for because we want more than one. And yeah, it returns a list. So it returns a list of units. This is going to return all of them. We're supposed to return a list of game objects, though. So what we're going to do is for each unit u in units, I guess we need a list. List game object goes is equal to a new list of game object. Boop, like that. So for each unit u, we're going to say goes.add u.game object like this. And then we just kind of go ahead and return the list of game objects. So these are all the enemies within bombard range. We are cheating because we're not actually implementing the map over here. But we've got this. And then, you know, so if enemies within bombard range dot count is greater than 0, then what we want to do is we'd have some sort of function over here. Void turn on bombard icon. Okay, to do. And maybe we have a turn off. Actually, we probably want something like enable bombard icon with a boolean. So you can pass it true or false. And then we could do something like here. If enemies within bombard range count is greater than 0, then we enable bombard icon. True. Else, enable false. Okay, so I mean, this doesn't do anything, but I mean, we could put in debug log here. Debug.log. City should have a bombard icon now. So if we were to run this, I believe we will get that message in our debug log, except we've got a is assigned a value but never used. That's okay. All right. So if I hit play, city should have a bombard icon now. So let's pretend we got a situation. So now we have detected that there's an enemy nearby. This city over here under its name has a button for bombard. Imagine you had a game, if you will allow me to rant for a moment. Imagine you had a game in exactly this state. You had a system in place where each city was already detecting if there was an enemy nearby. And if there was an enemy nearby, it would put up a little bombard icon there. Not only that, but you had a game that had a functional alert system. Could you imagine some sort of situation where you would not link these two together? I can't, and yet that's exactly the situation where Civ 6 is in for no conceivable reason whatsoever. Because, assuming this is implemented in any way similar to this, there's no reason that you shouldn't also be able to say something like, hey, alert list dot new alert, alert underscore city underscore can bombard. All right, with our localization system and everything, like we went and over-designed this to simulate how things might work in a real game. So in our localization, let's assume we had a second entry to this line over here. City can bombard an enemy. Like that. And I guess, hey, you know what we should do is actually pass some sort of icon. Let's call this icon, I don't know. I imported some. I imported 3 graphics here. Mug, Petra, or Petra. Let's use the Petra icon because reasons. So the icon is going to be called Petra, and we are going to make sure to send a reference to this own game object. So if you click on the tooltip, it would center the camera on this object. I don't think we're going to implement that, but we're going to keep track of it. So be better than Civ 6. Include an alert to let people know that bombard is possible. And what a ridiculous idea. Could you imagine? I mean, here we are. We've had to put in hours and hours and hours of work to write this one line of code to unify these two systems that already exist in our game. But bonkers, I know. But somehow we managed it. Unbelievable. So if we were to go and hit play right now, I think it would actually work. I mean, it doesn't use the icons yet. The icon's going to be a bonus bit. Hit play. Oops, no. Alert container wasn't set. Yes, because it actually happens here in start. So if start hasn't run yet, it won't have done that. A couple of different ways we can do that. We should probably, you know what? As part of this, during the instantiation process, we'll set this, and just in case the instance.alert container is equal to null, then we will set the alert container to be equal to the instance itself. There we go. That's going to be okay. I'm going to convert from alert. Oh yes, this dot game object. Hit play, and a city can bombard an enemy. Can you believe it? This city, which already has all the code required to see if there's an enemy that's close up. I mean, we left a lot of blanks and just sort of hard-coded the automatic detection here. But this city already had all this logic to figure out that there was an enemy nearby, because normally it would be putting up an icon above itself, which, I mean, I could implement pretty easily to put a little pop-up above this thing. It would be trivial, right? But let's assume that was already built in. And let's assume this alert system is already built in. We have somehow magically linked the two in such a way that we are getting the event over here to let us know that, hey, a city can bombard an enemy. Bonkers. Oh, all right, rant over. Let's go ahead and implement the final bit where we put an actual little icon over here. I've realized that what I would like to do, shrink that down. Let's put a dummy alert in here so we've got something to work with. Boop. Okay. What I have realized, go to 2D mode and zoom in. I would like to keep the circle here, I think. So I think this icon, I actually will call this the icon container, I suppose. And then inside of that, I'm going to create a new image, which is going to be told to stretch to the bounds of its container. It would sort of be nice if there wasn't an image, it didn't actually even show a white square. I'm not going to mess with the alpha because that's not what we're looking for. Ultimately, we're going to want to look to put in, say, an icon in there. So this thing, I just took my icons from Twitch, and because of their size and whatever, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, center within, be actual size. That looks pretty okay. So it's going to be a 56 by 56 thing. No matter what, like, I mean, I can resize this. It doesn't actually have to use the original size. You set it to a size where it fits nicely within the circle. And then all images, no matter how big the actual image that gets used, once we replace the sprite over here, as long as we don't hit set native size, that image will fit. There will be this 50-50 square within this little circle over here. That's good. So icon container, and I'll call this icon like that. Okay, that's good. In our code, when we called this, yeah, I'm just using the file name over here. I guess what we're going to want to do is probably create a resources folder. So the thing we have to do at this point is over in our alert list, right, where we're actually creating our alert, where we've got this to-do set icon. We have a string with a name of an icon. How do we get the actual texture? So there's a couple ways. We could have pre-set up some sort of dictionary, which has got, you know, the key, which is the string, and so on and so forth. There's different ways of doing it. But let's assume that we don't want to have to preset that and like arrange a bunch of stuff in the inspector. Instead, we just want to load this image, these icons over here. Well, the thing to do is to use a resources folder. You can actually have more than one resources folder with different ways, but it's better if you just have one. Resources. One S or two S's? Oh God, my spelling is so terrible. Hey, yeah, one S. Okay, I'm fine. It's fine. Everything's okay. So we've got this resources folder, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the icons into there. Okay? So under resources, we have icons, and we have icons with different name. Because it's in a resources folder, it means what we can use is resources.load, and you can use the templated version to specifically say, I'm looking to load a texture, and it's going to have, it needs a path. Now you don't include the resources, but you do put icons / and then plus alert icon ID, like that. So then we can go texture, icon texture is equal to this. Now, we probably want to do a little check. If icon texture is equal to null, well, I don't think we have to do anything. I think it's totally okay. Because what we want to do in our alert game object, we want to transform.find. We want to find the child in this hierarchy called icon. The problem is this doesn't actually loop through the children, so we probably want to give it the actual path. I don't like hard coding this stuff, but in this case it's going to be okay. So we're on alert. We want to go into icon container icon. Come up with the paste breaks. There we go. So if we do on our alert game object, we find icon container / icon. Game object, icon game object is this. And then in icon game object, there's a get component called image. And this has a texture. No, this is read only. We actually want to set sprite. There we go. We want to set sprite. Which, can we load this as a sprite? I mean, if we can't, we can make it work, but let's see what happens if we do this. So this might be setting sprite to null, which is fine. But in fact, I think if sprite turns out to be null, I mean, we could do that, but I think what we probably want to do instead is something like, if icon texture is equal to null, if we just use a null texture, we get an ugly white square. Instead, just turn off the icon. We'll still have the circle from the container. I think that's pretty legit. So if it's that, then we're going to say icon game object, we're just going to set active false. Else, we're going to set the image's sprite to this so-called image texture over here. So let's check to see if there's any compilation errors. There's one. Can't convert transform to game object. Right. Transform.find returns a transform. We don't want the transform. We want the game object. Although, if it fails to find it for some reason, this will lead to an error. But you know what? That's okay. Fails to find it, we've got other problems going on now. Okay, no compilation error. If I hit play... Okay, object reference not sent to an instance and object. I was expecting one of those. So right over here, right, because it fails to find. This returns a null. Okay, so you know what? We all have to change this up and say return the transform icon transform like that. Dot game object dot set active. There we go. So we're gonna get the transform, and this may fail to find one. But why? Hold on. Wait, why? Debug.log error. Didn't find the icon object. So just return and bail. And so this is what's happening. Our icon transform is returning a null. Why? Oh, because I never applied the prefab here. I was making alterations to this alert, but you can see how the icon is gray here. Because what's happening is we're hitting play in the game, and it's trying to create the icon for the alert that the bombard is viable, right? But this prefab, if we look at our prefabs over here, well, we actually can't drill down that deeply, but we never made the changes to the icon container, the icon part of the prefab. So I'm going to go ahead on alert, apply this to the prefab. Then I'm actually even going to get rid of the dummy one. Hit play. There we go. City can bombard an enemy, and it's using the Petra icon. And don't be confused. In our alert over here, I did put in the Petra as basically the placeholder to figure things out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to none. There we go. So our default prefab has a null. It has no icon really, but it still has a square. It actually is just barely, you can tell that it's overlapping the circle. So the ugly white square is there because it's enabled and everything. So we're going to apply this. So again, the default one does not have the icon. We hit play, it should get the Petra. If we hit here, it should have no icon whatsoever, which is great. But let's give the test alert an icon. So I have my mug over here. So our button, UI test alert over here, let's tell it that it should use the mug icon, just like that. So now I'm going to hit play. So we get the Petra for the city alert, and then we get the mug for these alerts. Hooray! And there we have it. What we don't have is the ability to click on one of these panels to zoom to the object, mostly because it would require the camera code. But in practice, if you wanted to do something like that, what you would do, I'm just going to try to wrap this up. For simplicity, I suppose I could put a button script on here. I think what I would do is I would turn off all of the highlighting, like that. But on click, so I would have, the UI alert already has a script on it. So what we'd want to do is have some sort of public game object zoom on click, okay, like this, and we'll make a public void. I'm going to call it on click. Debug.log unimplemented. So if zoom on click is not equals null. So if the zoom on click is null, we don't do anything. If it's not null, then we say move camera to look at zoom on click game object. Like that. But we can trigger these events. So if we've done this, we have a function. So now when we click the alert panel as a whole, we are going to signal the alert panel because it's got the UI alert script and an on click over there. So we're going to let the alert panel know when it's been clicked. So if I hit, so I'm going to apply the prefab changes. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to hit play. So if I click the test alert, nothing should happen at all because it doesn't have a game object. But if I click this, why not? Oh, derp, 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 because we never set zoom on click. So, I mean, I guess we could do an else over here just to confirm, right? Debug.log alert was clicked, but has nothing to zoom to. We've gotten some actual useful information there just to confirm what's going on. Hit play. All right, test alert. It was clicked, but nothing to zoom to. This one here also was clicked and nothing to zoom to, which isn't right. But that's because in alert list over here, we create the icon. The next thing we can do is say something like alert game object dot get component alert, which now exists. Oops. Oh, UI alert. And it has a zoom on click, which we want to set to focus game object, which actually I'm just realizing that's a much better name. Maybe we should do that. Also, there should be capitalization. So let me go to the UI UI alert over here. I'm going to hit the rename, go to this, capital F, there, focus game object. That I think is much better. I'm going to close everything out because save changes because you got updated because you had to reference the things. So now if I hit go, so the test alert here should still say, alert was clicked, but nothing to zoom to. But this one here, if I click this, it's just going to say unimplemented. It knows that it's supposed to zoom to this object. We just don't have the camera code put in to like actually move the camera. But there we go, a fully functional alert system for a strategy style game. How wonderful is that? I love it. I love it. I love it. And I especially love the fact that when a unit is within 2 tiles of a damn city, we get a pop-up to let us know that we can bombard a unit so that you don't accidentally click next turn without realizing that there's a barbarian within your city borders for one of your cities that's off screen right now that you didn't scroll over to, because why would you? If the city hasn't just finished a construction, you're not going to go over there to look to see what's going on around that space. No, you need to be told by the game that there's a goddamn barbarian within bombardment range. Civ 5 had it, why does 6.6 not have it? I'm fine. I'm fine. Thanks for watching. That's the end of this quick little series, and hope you found it useful. download link down there in the doobly-doo, and we'll be back with some more Project Mighty Spud real soon now. Ciao. Thank you, all our March Patreon supporters and these Mic Check supporters. We've got Yukofin, Snoopy TRB, Pavel Zdenov, Drazion, Gavin Power, Jan Torre Vel, Michael McClintock, Aaron Doibson, Craig Mortel, The Not So Evil Engineer, Julian Ogilafon, Maris Fieldvold, Speedy Savant, Steven Stager, Valiant, that's probably Stager, I don't know, Valiant Cake Fiend, Jason Yanity, Stephen Bonnerman, Kale the Quick, Neil Blakely, Milner, and everyone who has watched, shared, favorited, and subscribed. Thank you so, so much.